on YouTube. CoBMC Photography once again. This time the topic is actually going to be the camera's automatic mode versus the other semi-automatic modes, like aperture priority, shutter speed priority, that kind of thing. So I've always been steadfast in saying the automatic modes they're okay. The only problem is the camera doesn't actually know exactly what you're taking a photo of or what your vision actually is. So the settings it picks, yes, they'll be exposed correctly, but the artistic value of it may be way off from what you're actually trying to accomplish. And I'll show you what I mean by that. And then with something like aperture mode, you control the aperture, so you can control the amount of blur, the depth of field, how much of the actual entire scene is in focus, how much of it is blurred out versus what you're focusing on, and shutter speed, which will reduce two types of shake. Your own movement in regards to your hands shaking, because you never hold the camera steady, and if you're on a tripod or you're shooting something in action, or say even a flower that's moving in the breeze, you can control the blur for that as well. So that's what we're going to be getting into, and here we go. Now on some cameras it's different. For Pentax, the automatic mode is what's known as the green mode, which is that green square. And you see this line right there that tells you exactly what mode you're in, so those have to line up. P is an automatic mode with a manual override, stands for program. And then SV for Pentax, I believe it's a Pentax exclusive, is sensitivity priority, where you just dial in the ISO and then the camera takes care of everything else, shutter and aperture. TV mode is time value, which is the shutter speed. AV on a Pentax is the aperture value, so that controls the aperture. TAV is Pentax's way of doing manual mode with automatic ISO, so you dial in both the aperture and the shutter speed, and then the camera changes the ISO on the fly to make sure that the photo is correct. M is just like every other camera, manual mode, and B is bulb mode, where there's two choices. You can either press once to start taking the photo and then press again to stop taking the photo, or you can have it so you have to press and hold down the shutter button, and once you let go of the shutter button, then the camera stops taking the photo. X is the flash sync speed, so if you're using flash and you just want to use the maximum flash sync speed, then you just leave it in that mode and the flash will be at the correct sync speed. And that's pretty much it. And then the U3, U2, U1, those are customized user settings. So if you have, if you do a lot of portrait shooting, you can have specific settings set up for either of those modes, and you can rename them so you know which one is which. But anyway, we're just going to be focusing on the green mode, which is full automatic, and TV and AV. TV, again, is shutter speed, AV is aperture. Now, to showcase the aperture aspect of everything, I'm using the SMC Pentax DA 50mm 1.8 prime lens. Now, it has an aperture of 1.8, so I can easily blur out the background shooting wide open and stop down the aperture to show more of a depth of field, to show you the differences and all that fun stuff. So believe me, I think this is a lens that every single photographer should have in their arsenal. Whether you're shooting Sony, Nikon, Canon, Panasonic, Olympus, you need to have something that's about a 50mm wide or 50mm focal length prime lens, period. Like the image quality is insanely incredible, super sharp, and yeah, like 35mm or 50mm, whichever one that goes with your shooting style. But you definitely need to get a prime lens, and they're cheap. Like this one, for example, I believe I paid 120. I think it was on sale. I got it for 120 bucks, or maybe 150, something around there. Yeah, but it's invaluable, especially in low light situations. It's perfect. Anyway, let's get on to shooting in these modes and see what happens. Okay, so to start off, I'm going to take a shot of this post right here. because that's close. And you'll notice everything gets completely blurred out because the camera is actually picking everything on its own. And it's not the look I'm going for, because the background is going to be way too blurry for what I'm actually trying to do. And you have no control over changing the full automatic settings. So I'll let you know what settings the camera's picking. It is shutter speed of 2000, ISO 200, f2.8 for the aperture, and this is what it looks like. Now, what I actually want to do is let's switch this over to Aperture Priority mode. And I want to make sure that the background is not so blurred out. I just want to have a little bit, just a little bit of clarity on the background here, so you can make out what's actually back there. And I'm now at shutter speed of 1/60th of a second, f22, ISO 800. Okay, and now you'll see what that looks like. Okay, so this time we're going to do shutter speed priority, just to give you an idea as to how you need to increase the shutter speed in order to freeze motion or movement. Now, the general rule of thumb is whatever focal length you're shooting at, so if you're shooting a kit lens 1855 and you're shooting at 55 millimeters, your shutter speed needs to be at least 1/55th of a second. The only thing with that is there's no such thing as 1/55th of a second, so you want to shoot at 1/60th of a second. So whatever the lens length is, your shutter speed has to match that, and that will stop your own hand shaking, like all this stuff. You never hold the camera still, it's just not possible. Now, to stop outside movement, depending on how fast the movement actually is, you need to increase your shutter speed way above and beyond that. So, to give an example and simulation of that, let's swing this plant back and forth. And I'm at let's see here, I'm at about actually I'll shoot because it keeps changing because it's automatic mode. And I was at, let's see, 1/640th of a second shutter speed, f2.5 at ISO 200. And yeah, the plant is blurry. So let's change this to shutter speed priority mode. And let's start off at 1/500th of a second and see how that goes. Alright, so that's still not quite enough. I usually like to start at 1/1600th of a second. That's just my own personal preference. Seems to work for me. And I'm at a low aperture. So, alright, that seems to have worked. On some elements of the plant. It's hard for the camera to focus on everything. That's the other problem too. Okay. Yeah, the aperture is a little low. See, and this is where shooting in manual mode actually pays off, because you can control both. So yeah, why don't I just go ahead and do that. So, going into a mode that allows automatic ISO, I'll stay at 1/1600th of a second, and I'm going to go to f11, and we'll see. I even made this plant really move now. Okay. Alright, so that was shot at ISO 8000, 1/1600th of a second at f11. So, with all these comparisons, you should now be able to see the difference between the camera choosing for you for everything and having no idea what you're trying to take a shot of, versus you having some control over some of the settings, which makes a big difference, or taking full control over it and getting exactly what you're looking for. Anyway, until next time, don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel, hit the notification bell for when I upload new videos, and hopefully this helps. And as always, I always appreciate the support. Leave a comment down below if you have any ideas of any other videos you'd like me to shoot, and you know, just trying to help out the community. And once again, I am not sponsored by anybody in this video. None. Not Pentax, not LG, which is what I'm using for filming the video. It's pretty sick, actually. Dual cam. Anyway, yeah, so that's about it. Peace.